Hello everyone, Mehdi Photocure Alpha Mine. I'm an AI and finance professional and global investor from Japan for over a decade now. And on this channel, we have one mission: to cut through the noise and find alpha in both life and markets. And so today we are going to talk a little bit about China, and more specifically about a city called Hangzhou. Why we're going to talk about that? Because they have some of the 6 most prominent startups in China called the Six-Liter Dragons, and it may change the face of AI in China and also in the world. So let's get into it. Today we are going to talk about Hangzhou and its Six-Liter Dragons and why they might change the face of AI in China. But first of all, let's talk about Hangzhou. So Hangzhou is a city west of Shanghai. It has been very famous for basically 2 things up until now. So first, it's a fantastic landscape, basically, that are called the heaven in China. And the second thing is about Alibaba. So Hangzhou is a city where home of Alibaba, where Jack Ma actually started the company and has been famous for that up until now. But things are kind of changing because Hangzhou has been dubbed kind of like the Silicon Valley of China. And what has changed? Basically 3 things have actually started this revolution in this small city, and which have actually changed the way so local government in China have actually approached AI and different startups. So why Hangzhou? And why this has actually developed these Six-Liter Dragons that we're going to cover just after that? Well, there are actually 3 components. So the first one is a huge government support, so local government support for developing startups, and more specifically in the area of AI, robotics, and synthetics biology. And so that's why we have seen these types of startups actually grow in the Hangzhou region. And we have seen a lot of support. So for companies like Unitree, like Deep Robotics, or even DeepSeek, because the government have actually supported them, even financially, with free rent, with grants, and really helped them grow to the size that they are today. The second actually component is about the Zhejiang University. So actually a lot of alumni are actually the founders of the Six-Liter Dragons. I think that 3 of the Six-Liter Dragons are actually funded by alumni of the Zhejiang University. And it actually been kind of the Stanford of the Hangzhou region. So that's why there are a lot of parallels with the Silicon Valley for Hangzhou. And so this has really driven a lot of innovation and a lot of talent in the regions that are contributing to the whole startup ecosystems in this region. And the third actually component of why we have this kind of AI startups component which have grown is obviously Alibaba. Because Alibaba having a home in Hangzhou has been a real driving force to actually support and invest in those startups, not only the Six-Liter Dragons, but all the startups in the region, but also have driven a lot of talents from Alibaba to these startups, because a lot of alumni, I would say, of Alibaba have actually started their own startups in the region and have actually pushed innovation in this whole Hangzhou region. Then let's talk about the Six-Liter Dragons. So what type of company are they? What company are they? And what are they doing? So there are actually 6 AI and robotic startups, and you may have heard or may not have heard of them, but I'm sure that you have heard of DeepSeek, which is the first one. You might have heard about Unitree, Deep Robotics, Brainco, Manicore, or even Game Science. So we are going to actually go through each of them and see what they actually bring to the table in terms of innovation, in terms of AI, and why they are actually dubbed by many Chinese netizens the Six-Liter Dragons of Hangzhou. So the first one is DeepSeek. So you might have heard of DeepSeek, especially earlier this year when they announced their new reasoning model R1, and which actually changed kind of the way a lot of companies have approached AI after revealing the way they have built their own model and how they've been able to actually disrupt the whole industry. So why DeepSeek has actually become so famous? The main reason is because they have disclosed a way to train models at a much cheaper cost that was being actually used by companies like Meta or OpenAI or XAI or even Google. So this has been a huge revolution in this field, where we had this kind of Chinese company using much less resources in order to train reasoning model, which were actually comparable in terms of performance with with the biggest model at the time, so like OpenAI O1, for example. And the second thing, is that like DeepSeek was a truly open AI company, in the sense that they have published their paper and they have given to the world a lot of new techniques that they have applied to really reduce the need of compute for their reasoning models. And so that's why actually DeepSeek actually made a lot of waves and have become like one of the biggest and the most famous little dragon of Hangzhou. So the second little dragon we want to discuss today is about Unitree. So Unitree, you might have seen their robots because they have become very famous. So they are building humanoid robots at the moment, and they become very famous for many two reasons. The first one, because they are very good. They are very good robots, very similar to the one that Tesla is building. And these are the robots you might have seen like doing kung fu, doing boxing, or even doing backflips. They are very, very good at basically imitating humans, and they are also very cheap robots. So that's the second point, is that with a price of less than $16,000 for the newest model, the G1. So this is really like a mass market opportunity for a lot of people and a lot of researchers to actually test this type of humanoid robots. So Unitree has really become like one of the leaders in this field of robotics, where they really offer like a cheaper alternative in terms of robotics and in terms of mass market humanoid robots. So this is very similar to what Tesla is trying to do at the moment. And so that's why this Unitree company, which has been founded by actually not an alumni of Zhejiang University, but by a true fan of robotics, and has really like made a lot of waves in the robotic field. So the third little dragon is called Deep Robotics. So Deep Robotics is obviously another robotic company, but actually very different from Unitree. Very different in the sense that they are not trying to be a mass market robotic company. They're not trying to build a humanoid robot, but they are really deep into making robots for industrial purpose. So that's the main difference and the main differentiator with Unitree, is that they have been very good at making like quadruped robots, which are actually used not by basically normal people, but mainly by industrial or like companies. And so basically like these industrial robots, they have been used, for example, so like in Singapore to actually increase the inspections they have been able to do in like tunnels and like canalization, for example. And this is really a game changer, because these robots, they are able to perform tasks that humans cannot do for a long time. And this has saved a lot of money and a lot of time for the Singapore government. And so this Deep Robotics company is actually becoming very much prominent in the field, even though they're not making as much wave as Unitree, for example. So this is the third little dragon. The fourth little dragon we want to present today is Manycore. So what is Manycore? So Manycore is actually a company which has been founded as well, so in Hangzhou, and they have been actually very famous, not for robotics, but for being able to making like interior design and 3D models. So originally, like the company has become very famous because they have been able to create through AI like a way to render very fast a lot of 3D models of like furnitures and apartments, and this has been used by a lot of people already to create these 3D models. But that's only the first part, because now that they have access to all these models, so what they are trying to do today is basically create some kind of 3D world or 3D rendering of the world for robots. And this will actually accelerate the training of robots and robotics companies such as Unitree and Deep Robotics, because all these rendered 3D models of the world are going to become very, very powerful in the way it accelerates so all the AI models that you can find into the robots. So as you can see, there are a lot of synergies between those little dragons, and Manycore is actually going to be a very prominent company in the next few years. So after Manycore and 3D rendering, another type of 3D rendering with the fifth little dragon that we want to present today, and which is Game Science. So Game Science is the company behind the famous video games called Black Myth Wukong, which has been actually like a huge hit in the world. And why they have become famous, on top of being very good at making video games, that, well, they are actually like a huge team, like departing from Tencent because they wanted to change the way games were actually being done. They wanted to be much closer to the gamers and trying to have games without all these paid add-ons within the game. And so they have been able to develop this this game, so like Wukong, and this has been a huge success, and it's also been a huge vector of like soft power for like China. And so that's why today it's a very prominent like game design company and one of the six little dragon of Hangzhou. And finally, the sixth little dragon that we're going to cover today is called BrainCo. So BrainCo is actually a leader in terms of what we call BCI, so basically which is called brain and computer interface. And what they are actually doing is a bit similar to what Neuralink is doing in some ways, but they have been very famous, especially for the different type of processes they have been able to create, so like synthetic arms that have been able to be controlled by the brain. And so they have been like a prominent company, and they have been very innovative. And what we can see today is that like they are able to build like very powerful synthetic members for like people, and they are actually like a leading company in terms of technology, in terms of brain and computer interface. So that's the last of the six little dragons. And as you can see, we have a wide range of companies which has been incubated in Hangzhou. And that's really the power of the local governments in China when they want really to push some technologies like AI, robotics, or brain-computer interface. And we have seen that all these different companies have become prominent in their field. So what does it mean for China and basically the world? So what we can see is that China has been able to develop their own Silicon Valley. And this is not only Hangzhou, but a lot of different regions have pushed a lot of different technologies. But what's very important is that what we can see is that we are going beyond e-commerce and the traditional technologies, and we can see that local governments are pushing the next technologies, the next deep technologies with AI, with robotics, with brain-computer interface. And this really actually anchors into the Chinese central policies and how they try to push some technologies and some innovation. So what does it mean for China? It means that like they're going to become more and more dominant in terms of AI, and it's going to really push the innovation not only in Hangzhou but in the whole China. And with the combination of like the original, I would say, big dragons like Tencent or like Alibaba, and especially with the cloud resources, we can see that we have a lot of new startups emerging, and especially with these six new little dragons. And so this is actually great news for China, and innovation is going to continue definitely. But what it means also for the world, because what we can see is that a lot of these little dragons, they are starting to impact a lot of different industries outside of China. And I think that this trend is going to continue, especially in terms of soft power, where we are going to see that these innovative companies, they are going to actually influence a lot of countries outside of China, especially in Southeast Asia and Latin America, as we can already see today. And so companies like DeepSeek or Unitree, for example, are going to actually push in the international markets very, very far. So this is definitely like a great news for China, and this is a trend that is going to continue for a long time, I think. And what we're going to be able to see is that China is going to become one of the key players in terms of AI in the world, alongside the US, obviously, but not, I would say, a laggard in this field. And maybe they're going to become the leader in some fields. So today we have discussed about Hangzhou and its six little dragons and how they drive innovation in China but also globally. So as you've been able to see that there is a huge actually convergence between government support, about university and academics, and about the current incumbent driving forces like Alibaba to really drive innovation and actually push new startups and new innovation in these fields like AI, robotics, or brain-computer interface. And just to conclude on these topics, so definitely China is going to actually be a key player in AI and in robotics, and this trend is going to continue and is going to go outside of China as well, where we're going to see those companies like DeepSeek or Unitree or like Deep Robotics, for example, reaching other countries. So thank you very much for your time, and so if you're interested in all the news about Japan, about Asia, or about the US market, so feel free to check my other videos. And if you like this content, so please put some comments, likes, and see you in another video. Bye.